Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 221 of the Prancing Pony podcast, which is also the start of season 6.
That's right, and we have been brewing up the Gollum juice in 5-gallon kegs during our hiatus. We're going to have very sore throats, folks.
Oh, we will. It's going to be a long year, son.
That's right. But folks, for now, go ahead and pull up a bench in the common room. I'm Sean Marchese, the Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the Man of the West, who prefers his Gollum juice with a Pepsi chaser, Alan Sisto.
Oh, I'm not sure about that, actually. I may be partial to that particular carbonated beverage, but not after the terrible stuff we're going to have to drink for that Gollum juice. No.
Well, just don't mix it. I think that's the big thing.
Oh, definitely not. Well, folks, we are going to be trying out those pain-inducing Gollum voices soon enough as we dive into book 4 of The Lord of the Rings this season, but that won't be for a couple more weeks. Today, though, we're doing something special to start the season.
And for those of you joining us for the first time, we want to say welcome. Here at the Prancing Pony podcast, we are reading and talking our way through Tolkien's stories of Middle-earth, a few pages at a time.
That's usually, but a few times a season, we take a break from the books to interview a special guest. And that's what we're doing here today. So why don't we go ahead and introduce him, shall we, Sean?
We shall, because I am really pleased to be welcoming an absolute legend in the field of Tolkien linguistic scholarship. He's a writer and an editor who's been involved with the Elvish Linguistic Fellowship. Now, that's the ELF, because of course it is.
Of course.
He's been involved with them almost since its inception, and we'll get to that in just a moment.
I'm trying to quickly think of an acronym that would actually come out with ORC. That would have been... I don't think that works, though.
That'll be the Orcish and Black Speech Group. Someday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, folks, our guest is the author of, dozens of articles, which have appeared in the likes of Vinyar Tengwar, Tolkien Studies, Myth Lore, and more. And, in fact, he's been the chief editor of Vinyar Tengwar for more than 30 years.
And he's also the co-editor of the online journal of the ELF, Tengwestiae. And in 2000, he co-edited with our esteemed former guest Verlin Flieger an essay collection called Tolkien's Legendarium, Essays on the History of Middle-earth, which just happened to win the 2002 Mythopoeic Scholarship Award for Inkling Studies.
And now he's edited the incredibly highly anticipated The Nature of Middle-earth, published by HarperCollins just this month. That's September for you folks still out there in the future. It's a collection of still more unpublished essays by J.R.R. Tolkien himself, and it promises to be an absolutely essential addition to Christopher Tolkien's work in the history of Middle-earth, and you are definitely going to want to add it to your bookshelf.
That is if you haven't done so already. And if you're not sure you're going to yet, well, stay tuned because we will be talking quite a bit about the new book here. But I don't want to delay any longer. Let me be the first to say, Carl Hostetter, welcome to the Prancing Pony podcast.
Well, hi, and thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
It's our pleasure.
Absolute pleasure to have you.
Well, Carl, since this is your first time on the Prancing Pony podcast, we have to ask you the question that, we ask everybody who ever makes it here on the show. When and how did you first discover Tolkien's work?
Well, let's see. It happened in 1978, where I was given my first set of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings by a good friend of mine as a going-away present when my family moved to Richmond, Virginia. I devoured that set and, of course, like most people, read and reread the books multiple times and in rapid succession. One of the things right off the bat that caught my interest was those funny-looking runes and characters on the title page. And I just sort of had to know what they said. And then, of course, the snippets of Elvish and other speeches that we get in the course of the book just intrigued me. And so I started making a study of them as much as one could in 1978. Back before the internet, it was very, very difficult.
Right.
It took quite some time to learn that there were other people out there in the world who were interested in the same thing. So mostly I worked in isolation until, fortunately, during college, I came across not one, but two organizations of like-minded people who specialized in studying Tolkien's invented languages. The first was Quetar, which was published by the Tolkien Society in the UK. And the second was Vinyar Tengwar, which was published by the ELF in the US.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my first stage in engaging not only with Tolkien's fiction, but also with his invented languages.
Wow. Yeah. And so you said 78, so the Silmarillion had just come out at that
barely
time.
Out, right.
So did you dive right into that? Did that help you with your linguistic study, or did you not find that until later?
So I didn't read the Silmarillion until after I had read The Lord of the Rings probably 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
And I have to confess, I had to make a false start on it.
You're not the only one.
Exactly. Like a lot of readers, I was expecting more of the same of sort of The Lord of the Rings, which of course it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But my second attempt, I got all the way through it and absolutely loved it. It is my desert island book next to the Bible.
Yeah.
I recognize that The Lord of the Rings is definitely Tolkien's magnum opus, but in terms of the way that something that he's written personally affects me,
Yeah.
it's the Silmarillion.
I'm right there with you. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, I'm sure like you and like many others, I would never have read the Silmarillion if it weren't for Lord of the Rings. But once I found the Silmarillion, that's just where I wanted to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And to answer the other part of that question, yes, that absolutely did help with our study of Tolkien's invented languages, because there's a very helpful index containing translations of various names and such that were derived from Tolkien's own notes.
Yeah.
So that definitely added to our vocabulary considerably.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
That's great. Well, you talked a little bit about discovering the Elvish Linguistic Fellowship, and I actually went back through the Vinyar Tengwar back issues, and I saw that I think it was issue number 4 that announced that you were a new member to the group, and I think that was in 1989. So clearly, almost from the very beginning. But you've hinted at this already. Tell us a little bit about just how did you find a group like this before the internet, and tell us a little bit about maybe brief history of the organization before you got involved, and maybe just sort of how it's developed since then.
Sure. So it all began for me with coming across a book called the Tolkien Scrapbook. Some of you may know this. It's got a great cover with Tim Kirk's painting of Gandalf towering over Bilbo at his door. But what really proved life-changing for me was in the back of this book was a list of Tolkien organizations, prominent organizations from around the world, with their postal addresses.
Oh, yeah.
And this is how I learned about the Tolkien Society. So I quickly wrote and asked to join. And after I started receiving their bulletin, Amon Hen, which is still being published, I shortly thereafter learned of the existence of Quetar, which was a smaller bulletin format publication devoted to the discussing Tolkien's invented languages. So, of course, I immediately subscribed to that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
in the pages of Quetar, after I'd received my first set of issues, I kept seeing reference to this book called Only ITE. And I couldn't figure out what it meant because nobody bothered to spell it out. They just assumed that everybody knew what it meant. Well, I eventually learned that it was short for Introduction to Elvish, which is Jim Allen's book, which is still an important book. I mean, it's been superseded in terms of the amount of vocabulary that we have and in points of grammar. But for its time, it was, and even now, it really was a remarkable achievement considering how little data there was at the time.
Yeah.
ITE was published in 1978, but for various historical reasons, it did not include any of the Silmarillion information in it. But by applying careful comparative principles of comparative linguistics, historical linguistics, they were able to deduce a tremendous amount about the grammar and the relatedness of the two main Elvish languages, Quenya and Sindarin.
Right.
And this book also featured scholarship by prominent scholars that were associated with what was then, I think, called the Mythopoeic Linguistic Fellowship, if I remember correctly, including 2 names to conjure by, Christopher Gilson and Bill Weldon. So also through Quetar, I came to learn of the existence of an American counterpart publication called Vinyar Tengwar. So, of course, I immediately subscribed to that. The editor then and its founder was Jorge Quinones, a very enthusiastic young man who got the idea to sort of revive the MLF at a MythCon and rechristened it the ELF, the Elvish Linguistic Fellowship, and started publishing this bi-monthly bulletin, mostly a newsletter. In fact, that's what Vinyar Tengwar means, literally, newsletters.
Right.
Well, I was fresh out of college, had bought myself a Macintosh and a then revolutionary thing called a laser printer.
Oh, yes.
And I also had gotten myself access to the then revolutionary software known as Aldus PageMaker.
Ah, yes, I remember that.
Okay, yeah.
So, recognizing that how Jorge was actually publishing VT by literally printing out articles and literally cutting them from the paper they were printed on in order to fit in columns or on the pages of VT in the bulletin size format, and then photocopying that. So it was literally cut and paste. So, well, I had the equipment and the interest and the know-how in doing something a little better than that.
Yeah.
So I offered my services to Jorge, who took me up on it, and I started for a number of issues. I was producing the issues. So I was doing the page layout and sending him the masters for him to photocopy and mail out.
Right.
Well, not too long after that, Jorge decided that I should just take over being the editor of Vinyar Tengwar.
Okay, then.
which I did. And sort of the rest is history.
It sure is.
Yeah.
One little interesting fact, through the latest issue, which is issue 50, and there will be others, but I've been working on some other things, as you've noticed.
Yeah. We're fine to have you working on those other things for now,
Yeah.
but we would love to see 51 when you're ready.
Every copy of Vinyar Tengwar ever produced after I took over was printed, folded, stapled, trimmed, and mailed by me.
Wow.
Wow.
That is a task.
I do not miss those days. And in the future, everything will be done on print on demand through the Amazon, which you can currently get the collected back issues of VT as a print on demand from Amazon around the world as well.
That's a great resource, folks. If you really are interested in languages, that is a great resource, by the way. I highly recommend
And
that.
every one of the 50 is available.
Oh,
correct, Carl?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, it's unlike what Parma El Delamberon, Sean, where you can't get certain things.
Don't remind me.
Right. Well, Chris has been working on that. Yeah, he's slowly bringing some out in print on demand format. So, yeah.
Didn't mean to get sidetracked there. Sorry.
It's been a pleasure to be the editor.
Yeah.
For all those years, but there definitely are aspects of the production I do not miss and will never return to.
I bet.
Yep.
So you mentioned that transition from, kind of starting out as kind of helping out and then becoming the chief editor of the ELF. As you got into that, what is it specifically about Tolkien's languages, as opposed to all the other things that Tolkien's done in creating Middle-earth? What is it about the languages that makes that such an area of interest for you?
So even before I discovered Tolkien, I had discovered an interest in languages, especially dead languages. Okay. I had learned a smattering of Latin. I would go on in high school to take 4 years of Latin, actually. And I had also come across in a book, Susan Cooper's The Dark is Rising series, which I'm a huge fan of.
Okay.
I had actually encountered in its pages both Old English and Welsh, which intrigued me.
Yeah.
So I was already sort of primed in some of the major influences on Tolkien's invented languages. While trying to learn more about Old English, I discovered what Tolkien would have called, or what in Tolkien's time had been called philology, but is nowadays mostly called historical and comparative linguistics.
Right.
And is, alas, unfortunately, not so much practiced anymore as it was back in Tolkien's day.
Right.
So I was intensely interested in how languages were both related to each other and how they changed over time by the time I encountered Tolkien. To the extent that I, at one point, had considered becoming a linguist professionally.
Oh, wow.
However, as I came to learn after encountering Tolkien and deepening my knowledge of philology, that sort of thing is not much in vogue anymore in academia.
It wasn't that much in vogue even in Tolkien's time. He constantly seemed frustrated by the focus on literature instead of language, the whole lit thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Noam Chomsky came along and ruined it for everyone. So I realized, though, that you could apply those methods. Well, I discovered, was taught really, that you could apply those methods to Tolkien's languages. And of course, I first learned that in the pages of Introduction to Elvish.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, here's an area where I can do this thing I really, really think is fascinating.
Yeah.
And so I started to do that. Now, I got to say, when I took over as editor of VT, I had no idea that I would ever write anything about Tolkien's languages, because I was in the presence of these pioneers who had already done so much and did such great work, and people like Christopher Gilson, who knew way more about linguistics than I did and probably ever will. And I thought, it's all been done. Problem solved. No, that is so not true. As I think you can see even in my own career.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still not all done, is it?
No.
Oh, no.
Will it ever be, you know?
Well, I hope not. I mean, I hope nobody will ever just, stop being interested in it.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
in terms of the plan of publication, yes, one day it'll be done.
True.
Publishing Tolkien's papers on
Right.
matter.
There's a
Yes.
limit to that,
Well,
of course. Yeah.
The source material will run out.
Yeah.
Well, now, before we go on, we want to take a real quick break to make sure, folks, that you know that when you finish listening to this episode, well, the talk continues all night long here at the Prancing Pony Podcast.
That's right. Our amazing listener community keeps the conversation going in all of our social media spaces, from our common room on Facebook to our Reddit community to Twitter and more.
Now, on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast and be sure to follow the page and join the group for some great discussions.
And you can find us on Reddit at r/PrancingPonyPod. And we're also at Prancing Pony Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Now, folks, if you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us by joining the Fellowship of the Podcast at patreon.com/prancingponypod. Now, when you do get a lot. You get an active Discord community that includes live episode recordings. You get postscripts to every chapter episode. You get episodes without digital ads, free merchandise, and a lot more.
A lot more,
Yeah.
actually. I mean, there's live Discord hangouts.
Uh-huh.
There's a chance to be a part of our Questions After Nightfall episodes, or even join us as a guest in the North Wing.
That's right.
Lots of great stuff comes with it. So please check out patreon.com/prancingponypod to support the show and become part of the Fellowship of the Podcast.
And also, if you enjoy the show, you can help us out by giving us a rating and review over on Apple Podcasts. And please recommend us to your friends.
All right. Well, Carl, if I've done my homework, I think you've been the chief editor of Vinyar Tengwar since March of 1990, which I think was issue 10. And we've talked about this publication quite a few times on the podcast before. We've also talked about Parma Aldelamberon. So I think many of our listeners are aware of these two big linguistic journals that are out there. Many of them don't have copies at home, of course. And certainly in the case of Parma Aldelamberon, they're not all available. And so people may not even really know the difference. They may not have the familiarity with these journals that they have with other texts. Can you talk to us particularly about Vinyar Tengwar, of course, but since we haven't had Christopher Gilson on the show yet, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about Parma Aldelamberon too, and just tell us a little bit about the specific niche or focus of each of these two journals and how you see them kind of intersecting or complementing each other.
Sure. Well, of course, Parma is older than VT.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a larger format and a longer format. So it's more of a traditional journal, which can handle long form articles, whereas Vinyar Tengwar in origin was, as I've said before, literally a newsletter for the Elvish Linguistic Fellowship. But it, since early on, it would have shorter articles or discussions of, points of the Elvish languages. And it also tended to have more of a conversational correspondence set of pages. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it was coming out every 2 months, whereas Parma was typically an annual.
Gotcha.
Also lent it, more immediacy in that regard.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's changed a lot over the years. Now, the distinction that I make these days is that Parma is still for the longer texts. Mm-hmm. And as I'll be discussing shortly, I think, it's where the main effort of publishing Tolkien's linguistic papers in sort of a chronological fashion is being carried out. Whereas Vinyar Tengwar has become a vehicle for shorter texts that really aren't part of that main body of papers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it includes things that, snippets that have been collected at various Tolkien archives, et cetera, with some notable exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But generally speaking, the distinction still exists. Parma is where the longer form material is going to be published, and Vinyar Tengwar will likely remain devoted to shorter texts.
Got it. Okay. So that explains why something like Osanwe Kenta is published in Vinyar Tengwar, but then you've got Parma Eldalambron 17 has got the words, phrases, and passages in The Lord of the Rings, which is, 100 plus pages of text, right?
That's right. Yeah, those are two great examples.
And two that we've talked about quite a bit on the show, actually. So
yeah,
I think our listeners
I'm a little salty
know
about that Parma Eldalambron thing, as you all know. No,
it was hard to track down number 17.
I know it was. I've been trying to track it down ever since.
They'll all be available soon.
Alas.
I know.
I have 2 copies.
Of course you do.
Don't tell us that.
Don't tell me that.
We'll be making offers after we're done recording.
There you go. Well, even though we've talked much about certain issues of Parma Eldalambron, we've also talked about several issues of Vinyar Tengwar, and one that we've brought up many times, Sean just mentioned it a moment ago, is number 39, which published one of our favorite essays by Tolkien, Osanwe Kenta. Now, our listeners may not know until this episode that you're the man responsible for editing that essay and publishing it. So first off, thank you from all of us. It has given us a lot to talk about.
Thank you.
It was a real pleasure. It's one of my favorite bits of Tolkien's writing, actually, especially the ending.
Yeah, it's one of mine as well. I really enjoy reading that piece, and I have to admit I've read it more than once as we've gone through The Lord of the Rings here on the show. We'd love to hear a little bit about the process and history of bringing that particular essay to publication, including your work with Christopher Tolkien, place of the essay in Tolkien's writings, and so on.
Okay, well, let's resume our history then.
Yes, please.
So after becoming the editor of Vinyar Tengwar, and actually a little bit before that, I made the acquaintance of a group of like-minded Americans, including the aforementioned Christopher Gilson and Bill Weldon, as well as Arden Smith, who is widely recognized as the world's leading expert on Tolkien's invented writing systems.
Oh, okay.
And also my very, very good friend, Patrick Wynn. And we started actually collaborating together and coordinating our efforts in publishing and writing about Tolkien's invented languages. We would gather together for initially informal and then later formal meetings. And we sort of formed a group of like-minded editors. We sort of adopted a common style and a common approach to both the study of Tolkien's languages and the manner in which we present them. One thing in particular I'm very proud of is that we have from the start avoided using lots of jargon and specialized terminology. So to try to make the concepts that we want to express about Tolkien's languages readily understandable to somebody with a dictionary. So I think that it's that aspect, that the care that we took with the material that we published, including the bits of Tolkien's own writings that we were given permission by the estate to publish. And the words, the style in which we couch these presentations that caught the interest of Christopher Tolkien. Now, when I had first become editor of Vinyar Tengwar, and as just sort of normal course of correspondence, I would occasionally have to write the Tolkien estate to get permission to publish this or that or quote this or that. Very early on, though, Christopher wrote to me directly and gave me his postal address. So from that point forward, we carried on a personal correspondence, in the course of which I would also then discuss the linguistic matters and permissions and things like that. So he is I hate to say it, he was a fantastic letter writer. Just an amazing writer and wit, sometimes devastatingly witty, I have to say. So I quickly developed a pretty close relationship with Christopher Tolkien. And Christopher Gilson, in his corresponding role as editor of Parma, did so as well.
Okay.
So I think it was around 1990 where Christopher Tolkien approached Christopher Gilson with the idea of editing and publishing the Gnomish lexicon in full. in Parma.
Wow.
And because Parma was obviously the most suitable format for that, I've already discussed the distinction between VT and Parma.
Right.
And Chris, of course, said yes, let's give it a try. And so Christopher Tolkien started sending him batches of photocopies of the Gnomish lexicon. And with Christopher Tolkien's permission, Christopher Gilson would also send us copies of those photocopies to assist with creating this edition. So this was our first real baptism by fire of reading Tolkien's early and at times quite difficult handwriting.
Yeah.
So this is where we started to really develop our skills. And Christopher Gilson was sending Christopher Tolkien examples of the work as it was being developed. So in conjunction with the Tolkien Centenary Conference in 1992, Christopher Gilson, myself, Arden Smith, and Patrick Wynn, and Bill Weldon were invited to meet with Christopher Tolkien in person. This is the one and only time I ever had the pleasure to actually meet Christopher Tolkien in person.
Wow.
We had a very nice walk in the Oxford Botanical Gardens, and at that time he proposed to us that we as a team edit and publish all of his father's linguistic writings.
Wow.
And that's when the project really started in earnest. Now, over the course of, over a decade for sure, he would send us on occasion, big bundle of photocopies of this material, which was collected in what he referred to and we refer to as the box files.
Okay.
And so our job, as we saw it, was to order and transcribe and edit for publication all of this material in a fashion that would make it most clear how it had developed and how the later writings, say, related to the earlier writings, much like Christopher did with the history of Middle-earth, except for the languages. Okay. Now, some years after that, in the course of this receiving bundles of photocopies, we got a bundle of photocopies of late writings by Tolkien that Christopher had gathered together under the title Late Philological Essays.
Okay.
This was material that was certainly touched on the languages and in many cases grew out of linguistic discussion. It was not, strictly speaking, only about or primarily about the languages, but rather they would contain more or less long digressions by Tolkien on various topics, often of a philosophical or natural history nature. And amongst this bundle was the Osanwe Kenta.
It's exactly what I was thinking of as you're describing it, because that's basically what that essay does, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I read that essay. I think it was one of the first things that I read in the bundle, and I immediately knew that this had to be published as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And it was of a size that could be published in Vinyar Tengwar quite suitably. And so I did. It was a TypeScript for the most part, very easy to edit. I got it ready and out for publication just as soon as I could.
Oh, yeah.
And there were some other materials in that bundle, like the Rivers and Beacon Hills of Gondor, the notes on Arda, for example. Also part of what became the Elder in Hands, Fingers, and Numerals, which was edited and published by my colleague Patrick Wynn in VT. So that, in a sense, almost 25 years ago, was my first step in editing and publishing The Nature of Middle-earth, because all of those essays that I've just mentioned are included in the volume.
Right.
Now, what I have done is I've edited out some of the more specifically linguistic material for the more general audience. So it's not quite the same edition, but all the sort of meaty stuff that is going to appeal to the non-linguists is in there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Carl, that seems like a perfect segue into the new book, The Nature of Middle-earth. And I have to start by saying, I mean, honestly, only a handful of people in the world have had an opportunity to edit Tolkien's manuscripts for publication.
Yeah.
And only a few of those, I think, have been able to publish a book called The Something of Middle-earth. So
yeah, that's a small crowd.
That is already pretty cool. We already feel like we're in the presence of greatness. But talk to us a little bit about the genesis of the book. You kind of started to hint at this, and I think you even said in the foreword that it was kind of a natural progression from the work you were already doing with the linguistic manuscripts, but that it was actually your own idea to put some of this into a book, wasn't it?
That's right. So after Christopher Tolkien had finished what he wanted to do with the history of Middle-earth, he still had this rather large bundle of manuscripts that he gathered together and referred to as the Time and Aging file. And much of this writing was all late, almost all from 1959, a few pieces a little earlier than that, and some a bit later. And it largely concerned Tolkien trying to work out the revised chronology of particularly the years of the trees, or the Valinorian years, and the relatively brief period in Beleriand during the First Age. And what occasioned this was, just as Tolkien had decided, I think disastrously, by sometime around 1957, it appears, that the world had to have always been round. That the sun and the moon were coeval with the earth.
Right.
The world was not formed under darkness.
Right.
And he tried various ways to account for this, none of which would, I think, have been satisfying at all, because it attacks one of the fundamental distinctives of his mythology, and one of the most beautiful parts of it, which is the beauty and the significance of the two trees and then of the Silmarils.
Right.
Well, at just about the same time, he also decided that the Year of the Trees, which had previously been either 10 years long or just under 10 years long, ought to be 144 years long.
Oh, boy.
So a Valian year at that point became 144 solar years. Well, needless to say, that greatly expands the chronology of those the years of the tree.
Right.
And it also has profound ramifications on the chronology and the population size of elves as they make their journey from Cuivianen to the Undying Lands. And also in the same way in which he was concerned to achieve scientific verisimilitude with astronomical matters.
Right.
He really became concerned to achieve the same sort of verisimilitude in terms of population size, generational dynamics, how long a journey across, from the far east of Middle-earth to the shores of Beleriand would take, and what the implications would be there for how often and where and when did the elves have children.
Yeah.
Right.
How many elves were there at any given time? So a lot of this Time and Aging file is aptly named because that's the kind of thing that he's working out in these pages.
Wow.
Now, that sounds kind of dry, and to a certain extent it is, but there's also quite a lot of fascinating little glimpses and tidbits of information that arise in the course of Tolkien working out these figures and their implications. So, for example, at one point, Tolkien decided that not only Orome went to protect and teach the elves at Cuivianen, but so did Melian, and so did the Eastery.
Wow.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And he does this in two places, so it wasn't just a one-off idea.
Huh.
That's interesting.
So Christopher had sent me, he asked me, he said, I've got this material, would you like to see it? And I said, of course, yes.
Of course. You don't say no to that.
No. And the reason why he thought of me for this, I think, is because not only had I taken a special interest in things like the Osanne Kenta, which is very philosophical, especially as it gets closer to the end.
Right.
But he knew that I had developed an interest in sort of metaphysical matters as pertains to Middle-earth, as well as theological.
Right.
And prior to him asking me about the time and aging file, he had asked me to help the French scholar Michael Deveau to edit for publication Tolkien's late writings on Elvish reincarnation.
Okay.
And which I did, and which was published in a French journal whose name I will not attempt because French is not really one of my languages.
Fair.
So, I mean, this text has been known about, but not very widely, I think. And although the text itself in publication is in English, the commentary on it is in French, and there's also a French translation of the text.
Okay.
So again, he knew that I had a special interest in these matters, even apart from my interest in Tolkien's languages. So that is why he approached me with this material, because in addition to that sort of material in this file are several other essays that really don't have anything at all to do with the question of time and aging. So, for example, there's a brief essay just titled Death, in which Tolkien considers, well, if in Arda unmarred, would things have died? And he realizes, well, yes, some would have to. Even if you don't eat meat, you got to eat something that's alive. He makes the point in there that we don't normally eat something that has died by a natural death. So some things have to die, even in an unmarred world, so that others can live. So, I mean, and that's about as philosophical as you get, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So he sent me all this again in a series of bundles of photocopies, and he just said, see what you make of this. So over the course of time, I was studying this stuff, reading it as best I could. Much of it was actually written in a fairly nice hand for Tolkien. Some of it is even in TypeScript.
Well, that's helpful.
But yes, it is. That's like the blank page in the examination booklet. For a blank page. A TypeScript. Yes. And so I started thinking about this material. I thought about things like the Osamle Kenta, and also there have been passages, for example, in Parma 17, where Tolkien, in the midst of a linguistics discussion, will go off into some metaphysical matter or theological matters even.
Yeah.
So like a discussion of spirits, how they manifest to the material world. So I knew that there were all these little juicy bits, pieces of text and material that would be of great interest to people apart from their linguistic context.
Right.
And that I felt deserved to be given a wider publication to reach a wider audience. So once I decided that there was possibly a book here, I quickly came up with the title of The Nature of Middle-earth, because I took advantage of a nice ambiguity in English, where nature can refer to what we call the natural world, flora and fauna, geography, geology, things like that. But it also means something's inherent characteristic or qualities or what a thing is. So like human nature.
Right.
And that really does bookend the scope of the topics of the materials that are collected in this book.
Yeah.
So if you have an interest in Tolkien that lies anywhere along that spectrum, you will find something of interest in this book.
Yeah, you will.
And so that's how it was born. I ran the idea by Christopher, and he approved the idea of making a book. When I was in Oxford in 2018 for the Tolkien Maker Middle-earth exhibit, I met with Tolkien's publishers, HarperCollins, and who had already caught wind of this idea. And we talked about it, and they were very interested in it. So I sent in a formal book proposal after I got home and started work in earnest on completing the edition of the texts to go into the volume. They, I think rather enthusiastically, accepted the proposal, and the estate gave its blessing. Fortunately, Christopher Tolkien was able to see the proposal and a representative selection of my approach to editing this material and the organization of the book before he passed away last year. So, and of course, in a sense, he had already read it.
Yeah,
He just hadn't read my edition of it.
that's
Right.
true.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's how the book came to be. And as I'm talking to you now, this is actually before publication.
Mm-hmm.
It will be out in a week from tomorrow for me.
Exciting.
That's
So
so exciting.
now I, of course, already have received advance copies. I can
Mhm.
tell you it's a very handsome book. They've done the material proud.
That's great.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting my copy. And Sean, I'm sure yours is on pre-order as well, right?
It absolutely is. And it just sounds like the natural next step for anybody who's read things like Morgoth's Ring and
Yeah.
Peoples of Middle-earth with all the philosophical stuff that's in those books. So
Which those are the most
that's us.
fascinating bits for me
Yeah.
out of the history of Middle-earth. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a huge fan of Morgoth's Ring.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In fact, I first learned about Morgoth's Ring while talking to Christopher in the Oxford Botanical Gardens.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
It hadn't yet been
Oh,
published.
yeah, that makes sense given the timeline you were discussing. You're right.
Right. That's right.
Yes, and he expressed concern about how people would take it
Mm.
and what they would make of it.
Huh.
Of course, I didn't fully understand at the time what he was referring to, but it's the whole myths transformed section.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
Yes, yes.
We struggled with that a little bit on the show. I mean,
It's just hard to reconcile stuff, right?
It is, because you do the Silmarillion and you do the creation of the sun and moon, and then we dipped into Myths Transformed just to show people like how different it could have been.
Yeah. And like you said, I'm grateful that the Silmarillion was published the way it was, and that we have that story.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I actually, by the way, before we move off that topic, I've long thought I've had a solution to what Tolkien could have done to preserve both the mythology and the scientific realism.
I'd love to hear that.
Well, simply make it such that when Iluvatar made the world round and removed the Undying Lands, if he did, there's discussion about that in the book too. And what he could have done is just make it look like the Earth was millions of years old. The sun and moon had always been coeval with the Earth, and are now just astronomical bodies.
So Iluvatar retconning the way Tolkien did.
Exactly.
That works.
He is God.
He is the God in that.
He
Yeah,
can do
you're
it.
absolutely
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Nothing's beyond
He can
him.
do that.
Right. That's a very good point.
I actually took the opportunity to float that idea in a parenthetical statement in the introduction to one of the parts of the book.
Oh, that's exciting.
Excellent.
Speaking of the parts of the book, your book is arranged into three main thematic sections. We've got the time and aging, body, mind, and spirit, and the world, its lands, and its inhabitants. So maybe as you've started to give us a little bit of a hint there, tell us a bit about what we can expect to find in each of those sections, maybe a tidbit or two from each.
Sure. Actually, I have a copy right here. Let me just bring up the table of contents.
Sure.
So I've already sort of described most of what you'll see in the time and aging section. And parts of that were included in two different previews of the book that were made available online, one accidentally. So I don't think I need to spend too much more time on that.
Okay.
But so part two, body, mind, and spirit. This is where I focus on, well, the three topics that are mentioned in the title, of course. So, but the discussion sort of spans from sort of abstract concepts associated with body, mind, and spirit, like beauty and goodness, and gender, both grammatical and physical gender, elder and hands, fingers and numerals, hair, beards. And then there's also this description of characters that Tolkien had developed at one point in response to the map that was done by Pauline Baynes,
Okay.
where we get to see how he thinks some of these characters looked.
Oh, wow.
So that's sort of like the physical body part of this section. I then move on to mind. So it has topics including the Osanwe Kenta, the notes on Ore, which I've mentioned, which is sort of an inner advising faculty.
Okay.
Sort of like a conscience, but it's a little different. And
I just had a terrifying image of Jiminy Cricket. I'm just absolutely, I'm appalled at that image popped into my head, but yeah.
Yeah.
Right. One intriguing thing about that particular piece is that it points out that this inner faculty, this advising faculty, was when men fell, they gave access to their aurae to Melkor. And so from that point on, they could never really trust this advising faculty because they couldn't really know if it was coming from God or the Valar or Melkor.
Wow.
So highly significant. Oh, another piece that I had previously published, the essay on fate and free will, which was published in an issue of, or a volume of Tolkien Studies. It's in the book. And then the final piece in that sort of a middle third section of this part is the knowledge of the Valar, which is somewhat self-explanatory. I then move on to questions of the spirit, and it's which in Quenya is known as a Fea, and its relation to the body, which is called a Hroa. And also it touches on the visible forms of the Valar and the Maiar. And then comes the Elvish reincarnation section, which I've described earlier, and the short essay on death. The third part of the book, the world, its lands, and its inhabitants, looks more at the physical world as opposed to people and individuals. This is where we see a late conception of the shape of the world in Elvish thought and an associated myth of dark and light that is not really the same as Tolkien presented anywhere else. There's an essay called The Primal Impulse, which is actually a form of theistic evolution that Tolkien worked out.
Wow.
Allowing for a variety in species and changes in species over time, despite the fact that he has a very Aristotelian and Thomistic metaphysic of form and matter. I don't know if you want me to try to explain that here. I do provide an appendix on these metaphysical and theological themes. Where I do explain what these concepts are in brief.
I think it would be intriguing for our listeners if you can give a quick rundown.
Our listeners don't shy away from that kind of stuff, or at least most of them don't. And a little bit of a kind of a 30,000-foot overview of that would certainly be helpful.
Sure. Okay. So Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, and Thomas Aquinas after him, both spent a great deal of thought on a concept called hylomorphism. And what this refers to is a belief that the first thing that was created is an undifferentiated prime matter. In Tolkien's parlance, this is called erma, which essentially means prime matter. And this material is given not its being, but it's made into what it is by the combination with a form, which doesn't mean just a physical form, but the form takes primary matter, joined together, it causes a thing to be what it is.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So, for example, a rubber ball has the form of a ball. The matter is rubber. And if you change the matter, it's no longer a rubber ball. If you change the form, it's no longer a rubber ball.
Gotcha.
So it's the form and the matter that makes the thing what it is. Okay. This applies to living beings as well. So the soul is the form of the human being and of elves. Any incarnate, its form is its spirit. And then the spirit works upon what was ultimately prime matter to become the person that he or she is. Okay. So Tolkien has exactly parallel terms in Quenya. Erma is prime matter, and Kantier, which is a pattern. He translates it as pattern, but it really does. Essentially, you could gloss it as form. So very clear indication that Tolkien was very familiar with Thomas Aquinas and probably Aristotle. We do know that he had a copy of Aquinas' Summa Theologica, and in any event, due to his history growing up in the Birmingham Oratory when he did, there was a tremendous resurgence of interest in Aquinas starting shortly before Tolkien's birth. So it was very much in vogue at the time.
Wow.
But this is really, I think, the clearest evidence that he knew exactly what hylomorphism was all about.
Wow.
Now, Jonathan McIntosh wrote a book recently called The Flame Imperishable. in which he demonstrates in other ways the Thomistic nature of Tolkien's metaphysics. I highly recommend it. I think in its way it's as important to Tolkien's studies as Tom Shippey's Road to Middle-earth is in terms of linguistics.
Wow.
So when I say Thomistic, what I mean is referring to the works and thought of Thomas Aquinas.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Just sort of a shorthand way
Yep.
to refer to his thought.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, I mentioned Jonathan McIntosh's book. I also cited in The Nature of Middle-earth. If anybody is interested in pursuing that, you can find the reference in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and then the next bit is about the powers of the Valar. So we had the knowledge of the Valar in part 2. We had the powers of the Valar in part 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then we move on to some even more, much more mundane matters. Like there's a short essay on the making of Lembas. Doesn't have a recipe, sorry.
Wouldn't that have been nice? The official recipe now.
There is a brief note on Elvish economy, which talks about their agricultural practices and methods, among other things.
Doesn't go into Aragorn's tax policy, does it?
No, not really that kind of economics.
No.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I don't need that.
There's a brief discussion about dwellings in Middle-earth, the types of domiciles that were constructed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a brief bit on the founding of Nargothrond.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
There's a discussion of Manwë's ban on the Noldor against returning to the Undying Lands.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a short discussion of Elvish journeys on horseback. Oh, and then there's a section of 3 texts that focus on Númenor and the Númenorians. So there's parts of this were taken by Christopher Tolkien and combined into the text known as the Description of Númenor in Unfinished Tales.
Okay, right.
But there are some large and, in my mind, very interesting sections that he didn't use, I presume for reason of length or for focus. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to give anything away, but I will mention 2 words: dancing bears.
Okay, then. Well, you got my buy. I'm gonna.
Okay.
I mean, I was ready for the book anyway, but now I'm really ready for Dancing Bears.
Wow. Okay.
And then, so just as there was a discussion about how elves mature in age related to men, there's a discussion about how Númenorians mature in age with respect to non-Númenorian human beings.
Great.
That'll be good. Yeah.
It's much briefer than the discussion in the first section, and to me, it just seemed to fit here more.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a note on the consumption of mushrooms.
Oh, wow.
All right. Cool.
Actually, not talking about hobbits.
Oh.
Wow.
Then there's a very interesting text. This was also published by Michael DeVoe. It's called The Númenorian Catastrophe and End of Physical Aman. And the upshot of it is that at least at this one time, Tolkien decided that when the Undying Lands were removed from the world, it became simply a spiritual reality. Mm-hmm. The elves themselves were only spiritual in nature after that point, those that were in Valinor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that what was left behind became the American continent.
Wow.
So in a sense, you and I, at least, are living in Aman. Now, there are problems with that.
Yes,
there are some big problems with that idea, and I point that out in the book. But it's an intriguing supposal.
Wow.
We have some previously unpublished discussion about Galadriel and Celeborn and their history. Yet another version. Similar discussion on Sylvan Elves and Sylvan Elvish.
Okay.
There's a note on the delay of Gil-galad and the Númenorians, which kind of looks at sort of motives and whether or when he should have acted faster. Mm-hmm. 2 brief notes, one on dwarvish voices. Turns out they mostly, at least amongst themselves, speak in a whisper. Note on the Dwarf Road. There's a previously unpublished bit from The Hunt for the Ring. And then finally, there's The Rivers and Beacon Hills of Gondor, which was previously published. And I will say this, I chose that to give last because it contains some of Christopher Tolkien's own editorial commentary on that text.
Oh, okay.
That he allowed me to publish it when I published it at VT. And so I very much wanted to give Christopher Tolkien, as it were, sort of the final editorial word in this book.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That is wonderful.
That's amazing.
So, and then as I said before, I do have two appendices, one on the metaphysical and theological themes, and then a glossary and index of key Quenya terms, mostly of a philosophical nature.
Okay.
Right. Gotcha.
So that's an overview.
I mean, that's absolutely wonderful. And Alan, I can already imagine, like, I know certain people in our audience that we know pretty well that I can think, oh, that person's going to love that.
Yep.
And that person's going to love that.
There's something in here for everybody, no doubt.
It really sounds like there's something in here for everybody.
Yeah.
And certainly some of these titles do sound familiar, Carl, and you've kind of hinted at the fact that some of these have found some form of publication before, either in places like Vinyar Tengwar or in other academic journals and things like that, which, admittedly, some of those are still fairly obscure to the average reader. Can you talk to us a little bit about how the new volume expands on any of these materials we've seen before, maybe a specific approach you took in, say, republishing something like Osanwe Kenta for this book as opposed to when it was originally published in VT?
Right. Well, as I mentioned before, it's mostly been a process of subtracting material that's of a much more specifically linguistic nature.
Okay.
So I haven't really added anything. Here and there, I was able to tease out, maybe a line or two that I had previously not been able to read with confidence. But that's really not that's kind of a rare thing.
Okay.
So that there's really nothing added to that material that was previously published. It's just presented in a way that it will be of greater interest to a wider audience.
Well, that makes perfect sense, because in the foreword you spoke specifically that you hope to bring this material to the wider audience that it deserves, where, maybe the linguistic journal's a little bit more of a niche. Talk to us a little bit about how you accomplished that goal in bringing this to that more general audience.
So yes, for this book, recognizing that the audience differs quite a deal from what I had normally gotten used to editing.
Right.
I adopted an approach where I tried to put Tolkien's writings front and center with as few editorial intrusions as possible.
Okay. Yeah.
And what I've done there is a little different from what Christopher Tolkien did, especially in the history of Middle-earth, but he had a little different task at hand. He really was establishing textual history in a way that I'm not.
Yeah, that's fair.
So what I did was my introductions to each text, or each chapter, I should say, are relatively brief compared to what Christopher Tolkien wrote in his introductions. My main concern is to just give a brief description of the physical manuscript and its properties, like what kind of writing implement did he use, and was it hastily written or is it in a clear hand, that kind of thing. In part because if somebody ever wants to go and find this material, that will help them identify it in the archives. The second thing I was always very careful to try to do is to give a date for each text as near as I could figure one out. It can be sometimes difficult to piece together, say, from various chapters and texts in the history of Middle-earth, just when something was written.
Yeah.
So I tried to make that very clear right up front, so people wouldn't have to hunt and search and try to put together pieces of related information to figure that out.
Right.
So beyond that, though, I would then just let Tolkien have his word. In a very few places, I would have to supply some bridging text and an editorial note. Tolkien's text is always printed in a type larger than my editorial commentary. And my editorial commentary is indented. So it's very easy to distinguish who is saying what.
Good.
The other thing that I did is, where I did want to make commentaries about significant changes that Tolkien made while writing a text, or if there were more than one version of a text where something significant was in one version but not in the other, plus any sort of additional commentary that I had to make as to cross-referencing or dates or just even interesting things that occurred to me. Hopefully others will find them interesting too.
Hopefully, yeah.
I relegate those to endnotes, numbered
okay.
endnotes.
Smart, yeah.
Tolkien's own footnotes, however, I include as footnotes
Oh,
to
okay.
the main text,
Okay.
so that the reader does not have to flip back to the end of the text to find out what Tolkien's note says.
Right.
Got it.
With very few exceptions. Now, Tolkien in these late writings had a habit of interspersing sometimes quite long notes and digressions right in the main text.
Yeah.
And for some of these, it would be really unwieldy to give them as footnotes because they would occupy a couple of pages in and of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a few cases, I have done what Christopher Tolkien did, which is I had say author's note 1, author's note 2,
Right.
that kind of thing. But again, the goal here is to really sort of, I want to step out of the way editorially
Yeah.
and give Tolkien the stage.
Yeah.
And again, I think that will appeal to people who just want to sit down and read something Tolkien wrote.
I think you're absolutely right.
If they care about those other details, they can turn to the notes.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say, it really sounds very accessible.
Yes.
And maybe even, I mean, while I feel like the history of Middle-earth is pretty accessible for what it is, obviously there are parts that are less accessible than others. Yeah. But it sounds like you achieved at least that level of accessibility, and I think that's great. My hope is that this will appeal to everybody listening to this interview, and I think it will.
I think it will.
Well, thank you. That was definitely the goal.
Yeah.
And I had a great model to follow.
Yes. Yes, you did. Well, that actually brings me to my next follow-up, which, as a fan of J.R.R. Tolkien, what was it like to have a chance to interact with these materials and have a role in bringing his unpublished work to light? And kind of side by side with that, what must it have been like to walk with Christopher Tolkien and to have him tell you, I want you to put this together? That must have been amazing.
Well, obviously, it was an astonishing time for me.
Yeah.
I tried not to go all fanboy and gush. Hopefully, I succeeded. So, as I said, Christopher did have a very keen sense of humor. So it wasn't all just discussion of business during our walk. He would also, he pointed out various plants and trees and such. And it was just a very, very pleasant day. The weather was beautiful. And needless to say, it was one of the greatest honors of my life to be involved in that in any way.
Yeah.
And I like to say what I will be known for, if I am remembered once I'm gone, will be for the work I've done on Tolkien. I've had a long career at NASA. I've done a lot of things that I'm proud of, and there are people there who will remember me. But of course, what I will be known for is this work that I've done with Tolkien's manuscripts.
Yeah.
And I owe all that to Christopher Tolkien.
That's wonderful.
In addition to which, he was just a great, great person. He was always very kind and supportive to me and to all of us. And now, as for the first part of the question, needless to say, the very first time I got to actually sit in front of a Tolkien manuscript was seriously sobering, but also just an amazing experience. Now, I had gone to Marquette, and now actually I have to revise the history of this a little bit.
Sure, take your time.
My first experience with seeing any of Tolkien's manuscripts, as opposed to reading an edited version of them, was in the form of photocopies that other people had made of materials in some of the archives or in letters or other places like that. So in a sense, that's when I first started learning to read, interpret, and then edit Tolkien's manuscripts. Now, in 1992, in conjunction with our visit to Oxford prior to it, we had gotten the estate's permission to go through, when I say we, I mean myself, Christopher Gilson, Patrick Wynn, Arden Smith, had gotten permission to go through all of Tolkien's manuscripts at the Bodleian, with the exception of the family papers, and looking for material of linguistic relevance. So we as a team, for a solid week, for as many hours as the library was open, did nothing but sit in front of piles of Tolkien's actual manuscripts and flip through them page by page, side by side, looking for anything of linguistic relevance. Now, At that time, you could only get photographs of materials. You weren't allowed to photocopy most anything. And in fact, when you're in the reading room there, all you're allowed to do is take notes with pencil.
Mm.
But that formed the basis of some of the material that we published in Vinyar Tengwar and somewhat in Parma too since then. Now, this is actually really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of Tolkien's handwriting, at that time, now remember this is 1992, and we had really only started working with Tolkien's manuscripts in photocopy shortly before this time. So we were still all learning to read Tolkien's handwriting.
Which is quite a task. We've heard that from Dimitra Fimi and Andrew Higgins all the way back in season 1. Yeah.
Yeah. And I should say Tolkien's handwritings because it varied over time and even on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did is, rather than spend a lot of time trying to figure out a word that we couldn't read readily, we would sketch it, the shape of it, in our notebooks. And years later, after having spent so much time reading Tolkien's handwriting, I can now look at those sketches and I know exactly what it says.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's great.
Wow, how cool
Even though
is
I
that?
had no idea at the time.
The familiarity with
so
his handwriting over time gives you that knowledge.
That's right.
That is, wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, obviously that was just an amazing experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometime later, our group also had the chance to do the same thing at Marquette.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in a sense, amongst the four of us, we've laid eyes on just about everything Tolkien ever wrote, except for the family papers.
My goodness.
Wow.
But of course, our eyes were looking at it from a very different angle than most people.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
But even so, even though we were there for linguistics, we couldn't help but every now and then we'd come across something like, oh, here's the Book of Lost Tales notebook.
Oh.
Come here and see this.
It'd be hard not to. Can you imagine getting to look at the archives there, Sean? I mean, to actually look at the written texts?
Yeah, it would be so amazing.
What an experience that would be.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, well, and it was a great, great honor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
That just shows how Christopher Tolkien supported our work.
Yeah.
And was so generous with his time and his support.
Yeah.
Well, and that's got to be a wonderful feeling for you. And I think it's a huge testament to the value of the book that you've just published.
Yeah.
And I think everyone should see it as, to me, I'm almost thinking of it as an extension of Christopher's own work. I don't know how you feel about it, Carl, but it almost sounds like just volume 13 of the history of Middle Earth almost.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to get it. I'm going to put it right next to the other 12.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I did say in my proposal that it was sort of like an unofficial, I actually said 14th volume of the history of Middle Earth, because it's sort of unfinished tales is in some ways.
Oh,
true.
It
is.
That's true.
And of course, there's always history of the Hobbit too. So
yes, that's right. That's right.
I got to give credit where credit's due.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little displeased to see that statement make it into that early announcement about the book, because that was really just for me to convey to somebody what type of book it was. I wasn't really seriously making a claim that it's a volume of the history of Middle Earth.
Well, no.
But it is true that of the volumes that have dealt with Tolkien's posthumous writings, it is the nature of Middle Earth is most like the volumes of the history of Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Carl, you might have already answered this a little bit indirectly because you talked a lot about some of the chapters of the material, but I'd love to hear from you. Maybe what are one or two of your favorites? What are a couple of the really insightful bits in this material that either you enjoyed the most or that you think that readers will enjoy the most?
Sure. Well, first, Dancing Bears.
Yeah, without giving away too much more. Dancing Bears really is the answer.
Yes. Let's see. Well, I've already mentioned that one of my personal favorites, and I think it's among one of the best things Tolkien ever wrote, period, is the Osanwi Kenta.
Yeah.
Anyone who has not read that, stick with it. It starts out on a rather technical and metaphysical note, but by the end, there's a real powerful punch in the very last paragraph and the very last line.
Yeah.
Definitely stick with that. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy the Númenorian material, even though it's passages from texts that Christopher had already published, but it's passages that were not, by and large, previously published, and that really sort of round out the view of the island and its inhabitants, and it sort of captures more, I think, of the atmosphere of Númenor. And it also provides various details for those who care about things like heights and distances that Christopher didn't include. I think a lot of people are going to especially enjoy that.
I think so too.
Personally speaking, I'm most interested in the metaphysical matters, and to the extent that they touch on theological matters, that's of great interest to me. And so, if people who have that interest as well, you will definitely enjoy, especially part 2 of the book.
All right, we've got you folks covered then.
Yeah. We haven't heard you say much about the beards. I'm looking forward to that bit as well. I think that's going to be interesting to a lot of people.
Tolkien discusses who did and did not have beards. This was in response to a very late letter, December of 72.
Oh, wow.
From a Patricia Finney, who is, I believe, an English author in her own right.
Okay.
And I've reached out to her a couple of times asking, hey, is this you? But I've never gotten any reply from her. But anyways, so he recorded his thoughts about, which characters and which races did or did not have beards. And there are going to be some surprises. So, for example, if you don't mind me making some comments at the expense of Peter Jackson.
No, go right ahead.
Please.
He specifies that Aragorn and Faramir and Boromir were beardless.
Okay.
Because of their Númenorian heritage. And he also specifies that Radagast had only a short, curly brown beard.
Okay.
Wow.
So take that, Peter Jackson.
And Galadriel had a really fine downy thing that she just trimmed every now and then. Just kidding. Sorry. Well, they did call her Man Maiden, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Sorry. Inserting our own particularly twisted sense of humor on the show sometimes.
By the way, I will say just one more thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah. No, don't mind at all.
There's 2 little bits that I'm especially proud of. Tolkien makes some references that ultimately pointed me to 2 of the handbooks that he would have been issued during World War I.
Oh, wow.
And I specifically, so for example, Tolkien describes an Elvish device that basically amounts to what's called a heliograph.
Oh, yeah.
And it's used for signaling. And I thought, I know he was a signaler in the war. I have a copy of the signaling handbook that it's not his copy, but it's a copy.
Yeah.
And I said, I bet that's the heliograph is described in that book. Sure is. So I quote that. I love doing that kind of research.
Yeah. The inspirations, the things that he drew from his own experience. Yeah.
Yes. So it's just, that to me is always a real treat to be able to track down some reference.
Yeah.
Actually, I can't take all the credit. John Garth was the one who first pointed me to the signaling handbook, and then he helped me figure out another reference that refers to what's called the Field Service Pocket Guide.
Okay.
All I had was the initials, but he knew exactly what it meant.
Well, yeah, when it comes to the World War I era of his life, there's no better helper in that than John Garth.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that actually may be the answer to my next question. I don't know. But was there anything new that you learned about Tolkien, or maybe more specifically about Tolkien's Legendarium, so it would be a different answer, from working on this book that maybe you hadn't realized before after your decades of scholarship and work with his manuscripts?
Yes. The first thing I learned or was surprised by is his mathematical capabilities.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Keep in mind, he was doing this, these calculations and such in an age before electronic calculators were even remotely affordable.
Oh, yeah.
But there's one bit that I mentioned in here. I don't actually give out the full figure. But Tolkien calculates this ratio between 2 numbers in the, tens of thousands. And he calculates it out to about, I didn't count, but about 360 decimal places.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And noted where they started repeating the sequence of numbers. Now that's astonishing.
That is astonishing.
How did he do that?
That is really, really astonishing.
That is amazing.
But the other question, though, is why?
Yeah, why would you do that? I mean, sure, maybe we can get pi out to, 500 digits, but why?
Attention to detail, man.
Yeah, that's exactly why. But wow, the 300 places, that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
That is...
So I think we do get a little further insight into why he never completed the Silmarillion in his lifetime.
Still working on that mathematical problem.
Yes. Now, somebody did notice that Tolkien, or somebody pointed out, he actually did the calculation online and asked me if it was the same as the result that Tolkien arrived at. And unfortunately, no. Tolkien did make a mistake somewhere along the line.
Oh.
But nonetheless.
Better than I would have done.
Still impressive, yeah.
Better than the three of us combined might have done, though. I don't know. You worked for NASA, so it's very possible.
Oh, I would never have the patience to do something like that. I would just go online and...
Yeah, that's what these resources are there for, right?
Yeah.
That's right. So, yeah, there are surprises throughout the book, I think, that people are going to really enjoy experiencing.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to those. It's going to be so much fun to crack that open and read. I
truly can't wait.
Really excited. I can't wait for my copy to show up.
Well, I am super excited about the new book, and I know everybody out there listening is going to be as well. So, folks, please go buy a copy of this if you don't have one already. But, Carl, while we've got you here, I just would love to ask, what's next? Is there anything else you're still working on, or there's still some philological manuscripts that you've got that you haven't had a chance to publish yet? Anything that didn't make it into the Nature of Middle-earth, or anything else you're doing in regards to Middle-earth scholarship?
Right. So my plan is after a period of relaxation,
well-earned, I might add.
Enjoy some well-earned comforts.
Thank you. I do intend to return to my work on Tolkien's linguistic papers, both for Parma and in the pages of Vinyar Tengwar as the individual texts and situations allow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my main plan.
More stuff for us to look forward to. We're excited.
Absolutely look forward to Vinyar Tengwar number 51.
It may be a while, it sounds like.
And Parma number 23, I think it would be.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Excellent.
Well, we're all looking forward to those, but we're especially looking forward to the book. Like Sean said, I am really excited for this volume. I can't wait for it to arrive. I'm looking forward to reading it cover to cover as quickly as I can, and then taking my time and reading through it again more slowly. But I know our audience is looking forward to it as well.
And I just want to say what a pleasure it is to be able to talk openly about the book. Now,
I bet.
finally.
Yeah.
I've had to be very tight-lipped for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I am too. I'm really looking forward to seeing what people make of it, and I do hope they will enjoy it.
I'm sure they will. Just tune in to our discussions on social media. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of really encouraging feedback from people who've enjoyed the book. So
yeah. Well, Carl, thank you so much for joining us on the Prancing Pony podcast. It's been fantastic talking to you, and we look forward to having you back again sometime. Consider this an open invitation for the future.
Absolutely.
I will do that. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you. It's been a very enjoyable experience.
Well, we're pleased to hear that.
Thank you. Glad to
It
hear
may not always be true. Well, folks, that wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony podcast. But please be sure to join us again next week when we celebrate a milestone, 222 episodes. Now, we're going to be commemorating the occasion with a look back at the highlights of our last 110 episodes chosen by you.
And if you're still waiting to find out what appropriately hobbitish word we've come up with for the number 222,
that's right.
Well, so are we.
Yeah, sadly.
And while I stall for one more week on that, I will take a moment to thank the team that helps make this show better. That's our research assistants, as well as our barlowman, Becca Davis, producer Jordan Rennells, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, and website guru Phil Dean.
And speaking of the website, please make sure to give it a visit at theprancingponypodcast.com. We've got show notes, hilarious outtakes, Prancing Pony ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get all sorts of PPP merch.
And definitely check out our library page. You know we love the books here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, and we've provided links for you to get nearly every book we've mentioned on the show, including The Nature of Middle-earth. Now, we do get a few pennies from the purchases you make there, so thank you for that.
Indeed. And we also want to thank some more really important people. Those are our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'm going to start with DeMay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, Bruce in California, Mario in Utah, Seth in Texas, B in California, Joseph in Texas, and Kathy from North Carolina.
And then we have Lori from Washington, Josh in Oklahoma, Carlos in California, Brian from the UK, Cameron in Nevada, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Ryan from Alaska, Paul from Buckland, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Hal from Washington, D.C., and June in Ireland.
Wow.
Thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed.
And folks, please be sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe to the show through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast app is.
Indeed. And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and, well, most of all, your favorite new insights from the nature of Middle-earth to barliman@theprancingponypodcast.com. And if you want a chance to have your actual voice heard on the show, you can send us audio of you asking your question by visiting podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Just make sure to still send the question to Barliman as well, okay?
Yeah.
Now, Barliman's a lot more reliable lately, but we do get a lot of mail, so we'll get to you as soon as we can, and your question or comment may be featured on a future episode.
Now, as always, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.